Hello everyone. Tonight, we explore the silent depths of Derinkuyu, the largest underground city ever carved into the earth. It's a story not of grand battles or kings, but of resilience, of quiet survival, and the echoes of a hidden world beneath our very feet. Now, settle in. Let's talk about a discovery. A very quiet discovery. Our story begins, not with a fanfare, not with a grand expedition, but with the mundane, the everyday rhythm of life, in a small, unassuming house, nestled in the heart of Cappadocia, in central Turkey. The year was 1963. A time when the world above was bustling, full of change, of new ideas, of televisions and rock and roll. But beneath it all, in a place untouched by time, something was waiting. The house belonged to a man, a simple farmer, whose name, like so many ordinary lives, has been mostly forgotten by history's grand narratives. His days were filled with the rhythm of the land, tending to his crops, caring for his family. One afternoon, perhaps a day like any other, he decided to undertake a task that many homeowners eventually face, a simple renovation. A repair to a wall in his very own basement. Imagine the scene. The basement would have been cool, perhaps a little damp, filled with the scent of stored onions or dried herbs. The air, heavy with the quiet of the earth. He would have begun his work, perhaps with a hammer, a chisel, or simply his bare hands, slowly chipping away at the old plaster, the layers of dust, the accumulated history of his home. The wall, just a wall, separating his world from, well, nothing he could have imagined. As he worked, patiently, meticulously, he felt something odd. A slight tremor. A hollow sound. Not the solid thud of stone, or the dull crunch of packed earth, but a subtle, almost imperceptible, void. He paused. Listened. The house was quiet. Only the gentle scratch of his tools, the whisper of his own breath. He tapped again. Thud, thud, hollow. Curiosity, a quiet, insistent urge, would have taken hold. This wasn't right. This wasn't how a wall should sound. He continued to chip away, a little more aggressively this time. And then, a small opening appeared. Just a tiny crack at first. A sliver of darkness, deeper than any shadow in his basement. He peered into it. A rush of cool, ancient air, dry and heavy with the scent of forgotten centuries, would have met his face. An air that had been trapped, untouched, for perhaps thousands of years. The opening was enlarged. Slowly, carefully. Revealing not solid earth, but a passage. A tunnel. Dark, silent, and utterly unknown. It stretched away into the blackness, a gaping maw that swallowed the dim light from his basement window. The farmer, a man of the earth, accustomed to its predictable rhythms, must have felt a shiver. This was not natural. This was not a cellar. This was something else entirely. This simple knock on a wall, this ordinary act of home repair, had just unlocked a gateway. A gateway to a forgotten world. A world that had existed, silent and hidden, while civilizations rose and fell above it. He had stumbled upon the entrance to Derinkuyu. And what lay beyond that breach in the wall was a testament to human ingenuity, to fear, and to the incredible will to survive. This was no mere cave. This was an intricate network, a subterranean metropolis, carved with astounding precision into the soft volcanic rock of Cappadocia. Archaeologists would later estimate that, based on the number of living quarters, the vastness of its passages, and the incredible scale of its food storage facilities, Derinkuyu could sustain up to 20,000 residents, along with their livestock, for months at a time. Think about that for a moment. 20,000 souls. Living, breathing, working, existing entirely beneath the Earth's surface. Not for a few days, not for a week, but for extended periods. Perhaps even for years. And if these quiet journeys into the past help you drift a little easier at night, you're always welcome to return. Subscribing simply keeps the door open. Where are you listening from? Let me know in the comments. I read them all, and your presence here means a lot to me. Imagine the planning, the sheer physical effort, the organized society required to build such a place. And then, to inhabit it. It wasn't built for comfort. It was built for protection. For absolute, total concealment. From what threat, we will soon explore. But for now, let us linger on that first moment of discovery. That single, mundane knock on a wall, that opened a door to a history so profound, so utterly alien, that it forces us to question what we truly know about the past. The farmer stood there, perhaps with his hand still on the broken plaster, looking into the abyss he had unwittingly revealed. The faint, musty smell of ancient earth, the unsettling stillness. He was no longer just a farmer renovating his basement. He was the first modern human to step into a ghost city. A city that had patiently waited, in the dark, for millennia, to be rediscovered. A silent testament to a forgotten time, a forgotten people. And it was only just beginning to reveal its secrets. This discovery, born from a simple act, launched us into understanding a monumental feat of human resilience. A civilization that chose the silent depths over the turbulent world above. And as we continue our journey, we will delve deeper into this incredible feat of engineering, this silent city that once housed 20,000 people in an unbroken vigil against the unknown. The wall had fallen. The threshold was crossed. And now, we stand at the mouth of the unknown. Imagine the farmer, his heart beating a slow, steady rhythm against his ribs, echoing the silence of the basement. He holds a single light, perhaps an old flashlight, or a flickering oil lamp, the flame dancing nervously in the cool, ancient draft that breathes from the dark. He steps forward. The first step, away from the world of the sun, and into the world of the deep. His boots crunch on the dry, volcanic dust. It's a sound that hasn't been heard in this passage for centuries. A sound of a living soul, returning to a place of ghosts. The air here, it feels different. It's not the stale air of a cellar, but something remarkably fresh, yet heavy with the weight of time. It carries the scent of cold stone, and a faint, metallic tang, the memory of iron tools against rock. As he moves further, the light from his basement fades, shrinking into a small, rectangular memory of the world he just left. Now, there is only the circle of his lamp, and the vast, hungry shadows beyond. The tunnel is narrow. The walls are not rough like a natural cave, no. They are smooth, curved. You can see the marks, the rhythmic, intentional strikes of ancient chisels. Each mark represents a moment of labor, a breath taken hundreds of years ago. He reaches out a hand, touching the cold, tough rock. It's soft to the touch, almost like dried clay, yet it has held the weight of the world above without flinching. As he descends, the floor begins to slope. It's not a straight path, but a gentle, winding curve, leading him deeper into the belly of Cappadocia. The quiet here is absolute. It's a silence that has a physical weight to it. You can almost hear the earth itself, breathing, shifting, dreaming. He passes a small alcove, then another. Perhaps they were for lamps, or for guards to stand in the shadows. The ceiling is low in some places, forcing him to bow his head, an involuntary gesture of respect to the architects of the dark. He realizes now, this was not built by one man. It was carved by a civilization, an army of workers, moving millions of cubic feet of rock, one handful at a time. Suddenly, the passage opens up. The walls recede, and his light struggles to find the boundaries of the space. He has reached the first grand chamber. Here, the silence feels even larger. He raises his lamp, and the shadows retreat, revealing high, arched ceilings, and pillars left standing by the carvers to support the mountain above. This is where it truly begins to sink in. This is not just a tunnel. This is a room. A room where people lived. There are hollows in the floor for storage, stone benches carved directly from the walls. In the corner, he sees the black soot of an ancient cooking fire, a shadow of a meal shared in the dark, 1,000 years ago. He wonders, what was the atmosphere like when this room was full? The murmur of voices, the smell of baking bread, the sound of children playing in the shadows. How did they feel, knowing there was a whole world above them, a world they had to leave behind? He moves to the edge of the chamber, and finds another opening. A staircase. Not of wood or metal, but steps cut directly into the solid rock. They lead down. Further down. Level upon level, into the absolute dark. The descent is slow. Each step takes him further from the sky. He thinks about the sheer scale of it. We know now that this city could hold 20,000 people. 20,000 lives woven together in these stone veins. But for him, in this moment, it's just the darkness and the steps. He stops for a moment and turns off his light. Just to feel it. The darkness is total. It's not just the absence of light, it's a presence. It wraps around him like a heavy blanket. He can hear his own heartbeat, a drum in the deep. And for a split second, he can almost hear them. The whispers of the 20,000. The rustle of their clothes, the quiet prayers, the shared secrets of a city under siege by fear. He clicks the light back on. The shadows leap back into the corners. He must keep going. There is a strange pull to this place, a magnetic mystery that demands to be explored. Every corner he turns, every doorway he passes, is a question without an answer. Why go this deep? Why carve 18 levels into the earth? As he reaches the second level, he sees it. The first massive rolling stone door. A wheel of rock, 5 feet wide, sitting in its track, waiting. waiting to seal the world out, waiting to turn this city into an impenetrable fortress. He stands before the stone wheel, a silent sentinel of a forgotten era. He realizes then that he isn't just exploring a city. He is walking through a masterpiece of survival. A place where humanity refused to be extinguished, where they chose the cold embrace of the earth over the fire of the world above. The descent continues. The air grows cooler. The mystery grows deeper. And the silence, the beautiful, terrifying silence of Derinkuyu, swallows him whole. We are descending further now, leaving the upper levels behind. The air has changed again. It is thinner, crisper, and it carries a strange, mathematical precision. Welcome to the geometry of fear. Have you ever wondered what fear looks like when it is carved into stone? It isn't chaotic. It isn't messy. In Derinkuyu, fear is a series of perfect angles, calculated curves, and intentional depths. The deeper we go, the more we realize that this city wasn't just dug, it was engineered by a mind that understood exactly what it was hiding from. Look at the walls around us. As we move into the third and fourth levels, the tunnels begin to narrow. They are just wide enough for one person to pass, perhaps two, but only if they are close. This wasn't an accident. This was the architecture of defense. If an enemy were to find this place, if they were to breach that first massive stone door, they would find themselves trapped in a labyrinth designed to turn their strength against them. In the dark, speed is an illusion. Here, in these narrow veins of rock, an invading army would be forced to move in a single line. One by one. Vulnerable. Exposed. The carvers knew this. They shaped these corridors with a deadly intent, creating kill zones where the ceiling drops so low that a tall soldier would have to crawl, bending his neck, losing his balance, while someone waiting in the shadows above would have the absolute advantage. But it's more than just defense. It's the sheer, impossible, scale of the geometry. We are now 60, 80, 100 feet below the surface. Above us, millions of tons of volcanic rock are pressing down. Can you feel that weight? It's a silent pressure, a constant reminder of the world's gravity. And yet, the ceilings do not collapse. The pillars do not crumble. The ancient architects understood the physics of the earth, even if they didn't have the words we use today. They left behind thick columns of tuff, strategically placed to distribute the immense weight of the mountain above. This wasn't guesswork. This was a sophisticated understanding of structural integrity, born from a necessity so great that failure meant being buried alive. Pause for a moment. Listen to the silence of the geometry. In these deeper levels, the rooms become more specialized. We pass a communal kitchen, the ceiling blackened by the smoke of 1,000 fires. The smoke didn't linger here, it was drawn upward by invisible currents, guided by the ventilation shafts that pierce through the levels like the lungs of a giant. The geometry of the air, as vital as the geometry of the stone. Think about the people who sat here. 20,000 residents, moving through these geometric puzzles. How did they keep their sanity? When you are 200 feet underground, the concepts of up and down begin to blur. The sun is a myth. The stars are a memory. There is only the rhythm of the chisel, and the geometry of your cell. Every room here has a purpose. We see the storage pits for grain, carved in perfect circles into the floor. We see the wine presses, the stone troughs, where the juice of grapes was collected in the dark. It is a haunting thought that life continued here in such an organized fashion. They didn't just hide, they thrived in the geometry. They brought their culture, their habits, their very essence into the rock. But why 18 levels? Why go so deep that the air grows cold and the light of a torch seems to be swallowed by the walls? Perhaps it was because the threat from above was not just a raid. Perhaps it was a sustained terror, a shadow that loomed over the land for generations. The deeper they went, the safer they felt. Every level was a new layer of protection, a new geometric barrier between them and whatever haunted the surface. As we move toward the 5th level, the stairs become steeper. The rock changes color, becoming darker, more compressed. The marks of the tools are smaller here, more precise. It's as if the carvers grew more desperate, or perhaps more skilled, as they neared the heart of the city. Imagine being the person tasked with carving a perfect arch. Hundreds of feet underground, by the light of a single, flickering wick. No blueprints. No modern levels. Just an intuitive sense of the stone and the driving force of survival. Every strike of the hammer was a prayer for safety. Every inch of progress was a victory over the darkness. We are walking through a map of the human soul under pressure. A map made of stone. A map that tells us that when we are truly afraid, we do not just run. We build. We organize. We create systems of such complexity that even thousands of years later, we are left in awe of what fear can accomplish. Stay here with me, in this narrow corridor. Feel the cool touch of the wall. Hear the faint, distant echo of a pebble falling somewhere in the depths. We are in the middle of a masterpiece of paranoia, a cathedral of concealment. And as we prepare to descend even further, ask yourself, what would it take for you to leave the sun behind? What kind of world would you have to be living in to find comfort in the geometry of the deep? The stairs are waiting. The 6th level beckons. And the secrets, they are only getting heavier. We have reached a place where the world above no longer exists. Even the memory of the wind, the sound of rain, or the warmth of the sun feels like a dream from another life. Welcome to the 4th level. Welcome to the architecture of silence. In our world, the world of the surface, silence is often a lack of sound. But here, in the heart of Derinkuyu, silence is a physical presence. It is heavy. It is thick. It is something you can almost touch, like the cold, smooth walls of the tough rock. The architects of this city didn't just build rooms, they built a sanctuary for the quiet. They understood that when you are hiding for your life, silence is your greatest ally and your most constant companion. Look at the ceiling of this chamber. Notice how it isn't flat, but slightly domed. Notice the pillars, how they flow into the roof like the roots of a giant tree. This is not just for strength. This shape, this specific curvature, was designed to swallow sound. In a city of 20,000 people, living in such close quarters, the noise could have been deafening. The crying of infants, the clatter of pots, the low murmur of thousands of conversations. But the rock, this soft, porous volcanic ash, acts as a natural acoustic dampener. It drinks the sound. It pulls the vibrations into itself, leaving only a soft, muffled stillness. Imagine walking through these halls when the city was full. You wouldn't hear a roar of a crowd. You would hear 1,000 whispers, all layered upon each other, like the rustling of dry leaves in a forest. A collective breath of a civilization, tucked away in the pockets of the earth. Let us walk slowly now, through this corridor. Hear the sound of your own footsteps. Crunch, crunch, silence. The dust on the floor is thick here. It is a mixture of pulverized rock and the microscopic remains of ancient lives. Every step you take releases a tiny cloud of history. As we move deeper into this level, we find the private quarters. These are not large rooms. They are small, intimate spaces, carved for families. A small raised platform for sleeping, a niche in the wall for a single oil lamp, a tiny cupboard for a few precious belongings. This is where the architecture of silence becomes personal. This is where a mother would have hummed a lullaby to her child, her voice vibrating through the very stone that protected them. Think of the psychological toll of this silence. For months at a time, these people lived without the horizon, without the changing colors of the sky. Their world was the color of this rock. A pale, dusty tan, or a deep, shadowy gray. Their sense of time was not dictated by the sun, but by the flickering of their lamps. When the oil ran low, it was night. When a new wick was lit, it was morning. The architecture of silence also had a darker purpose. Communication. If an enemy were to enter the tunnels, the silence would become a weapon. Every sound made by an intruder, the clink of armor, the heavy tread of a boot, the grunt of a breath, would travel through these specialized corridors. The residents would hear them long before they were seen. The city was an ear, always listening, always waiting. Notice the small holes in the walls, near the ceiling. These are not just for air. They are acoustic tubes. They allowed people on different levels to communicate in whispers. A warning could travel from the 18th level to the surface in a matter of seconds, moving through the stone like a secret passed from lip to ear. A network of whispers, binding 20,000 people into a single, silent organism. We pass a doorway now that leads to a larger hall. This was likely a meeting place. A space for the elders to sit and discuss the fate of their people. Even here, the architecture is designed for restraint. The voices would stay low. The discussions would be grave. When you are 200 feet underground, you do not shout. You respect the weight of the earth above you. Is it possible to feel lonely in a city of 20,000? Perhaps. But here, the architecture forced a kind of communal intimacy. You were never truly alone. The stone connected you to everyone else. You shared the same air, the same water, the same silence. It was a shared destiny, carved in tuff. As your eyes adjust to the dimness, you begin to see the beauty in the simplicity. There are no ornate carvings here. No gold. No marble. The beauty is in the function. The beauty is in the fact that this place exists at all. It is a monument to the human will to remain, to stay, to endure. We are standing now at the edge of a deep shaft. Look down. The light of our torch cannot reach the bottom. This is a well, but also a vertical pathway for the silence to travel. If you were to drop a stone, you would wait a long time for the sound of the splash. Let us stay here, in this quiet hall, for a moment longer. Close your eyes. Try to imagine the weight of the mountain above your head. Don't be afraid. The architects knew what they were doing. They built this silence to hold you. They built this stillness to keep you safe. The fourth level is a transition. We are moving away from the living spaces of the upper tiers and heading toward the heart of the machine. The air is getting colder. The silence is getting deeper. And as we prepare to find the fifth level, remember that in Derinkuyu, the walls have ears, and the silence has a story to tell. We are deeper now. Much deeper. We have reached a threshold where the concept of day and night becomes a ghostly memory. Level 5. A place of eternal twilight. Welcome to the city without sun. In the world above, the sun is the conductor of our lives. It tells us when to wake, when to work, when to rest. Its light defines our colors, our shadows, our very perception of reality. But here, in the suffocating embrace of Derinkuyu, the sun is a legend. A story told by elders to children who have never seen a blue sky. Here, time is not a cycle of light and dark, it is a cycle of oil and wick. Imagine living your entire existence in the amber glow of a small clay lamp. These lamps were the lifeblood of this level. Every room, every corridor, has small niches carved into the walls, just at shoulder height. Look closely at the soot marks above them. Those black stains are the fingerprints of centuries. They tell us where the light sat, how long it burned, and how many generations tended to those tiny flames. Without the sun, the human eye begins to change. In this city without sun, vision becomes a tactile experience. You don't just see the wall, you feel its presence in the air. You learn to navigate by the echo of your breath, by the subtle change in temperature as you move from a narrow tunnel into a wider chamber. The people of Derinkuyu became masters of the dark. Their pupils were always wide, always searching, always hungry for the smallest glimmer of light. But what does it do to the soul to live without the sun? Psychologists often talk about the importance of the horizon. The horizon gives us a sense of place, a sense of scale. In this level, there is no horizon. Your world is only as far as your lamp can reach. 6 feet, 10 feet, and then the wall. The architecture here is intimate, almost uncomfortably so. It presses in on you, reminding you that you are a guest in the earth's belly. Think of the 20,000 residents. How did they manage the darkness together? In a city without sun, privacy was a luxury that few could afford. Life was communal. The darkness forced people together. You would hear the heartbeat of your neighbor through the thin stone partitions. You would smell the communal stews being cooked in the great ovens, the scent of scorched grain and lentils drifting through the ventilation shafts, a sensory map of dinner in the deep. They had to be organized. They had to be disciplined. Without the sun to mark the hours, they created their own rituals. Perhaps a bell would ring, its sound traveling through the acoustic tubes we saw earlier. A signal for prayer, a signal for work, a signal for silence. Life became a rhythmic machine, a clockwork of human necessity, ticking away in the dark. And yet, they found ways to bring beauty to this sunless world. Look at the floor of this chamber. It is worn smooth, not just by feet, but by the deliberate polishing of those who called this home. In some rooms, you can find faint traces of pigments, ochre and charcoal, where someone tried to draw a memory of a flower, or a tree, or a bird. A desperate attempt to keep the surface world alive in their minds. Without the sun, the seasons were forgotten. There was no spring thaw, no autumn harvest. The temperature in Derinkuyu remains a constant, a steady, cool 55 degrees Fahrenheit, year-round. It is a climate of stasis. A world where nothing grows, and nothing decays quickly. It is a perfect preservation of fear. We pass a storage room now, one of the many that allowed this city to sustain 20,000 people. The archaeologists found massive jars here, some large enough to hold a man. They were filled with olive oil, with wine, with dried fruits. These were their sun replacements. The energy of the sun, captured in the fruit of the earth, and brought down into the dark to keep them alive. Imagine a child born on this level. A child of the stone. For them, the world is a series of interconnected rooms. The sky is a ceiling of volcanic tuff. The wind is the faint draft from a ventilation shaft 200 feet away. Their entire reality is built on the geometry of survival. Would they be afraid of the sun if they were ever taken to the surface? Would the brightness burn their eyes? Would the vastness of the open sky feel like a threat after the safety of the narrow tunnels? In the city without sun, faith was the only true light. We are approaching the chapel levels soon, but even here, in the common areas, there is a sense of the sacred. Every act of survival, every drop of water drawn from the deep wells, every piece of bread shared, was a miracle. Because in the dark, everything is a gift. Let us stay here, in the center of this sunless room. Extinguish your mental light for a moment. Feel the absolute, crushing weight of the silence. This is what it meant to be part of the 20,000. This is the price they paid for safety. They gave up the sky to keep their lives. And as we prepare to move even deeper toward the engineering marvels of the next level, remember the lamps. Remember the flickering wicks. Because in Derinkuyu, as long as the light stayed lit, the civilization survived. The sun was gone, but the spirit remained unyielding. Leaving the living quarters behind, we move into the structural heart of this mountain. To look at these walls is to see more than just rock. It is to see a calculation of survival that defies everything we know about the ancient world. This is where the earth meets the mind. Consider the sheer impossibility of what was achieved here. We are standing hundreds of feet below the soil of Cappadocia. Around us, millions of tons of volcanic tuff pressed down with a relentless, silent force. In any other cave, in any other hole in the ground, the air would be stagnant, thick with the smell of damp earth and carbon dioxide. You would feel the weight on your chest, the struggle for a clean breath. But here, the air moves. It is cool, it is crisp, and it is constant. This is the miracle of the 52 ventilation shafts. These are not just holes. They are the lungs of a sleeping giant. Some of these shafts reach straight down for over 180 feet, piercing through every single level of the city. Imagine the precision required to dig a perfectly vertical chimney through solid rock, starting from the surface and hitting a specific room 18 levels below, using nothing but bronze chisels and handheld plummets. One mistake, a single degree of error in the angle of the dig, and the shaft would have been useless. It would have hit a wall or dead rock. But they didn't miss. Not once. As you stand near one of these shafts, you can feel a faint, ghostly tug of a breeze. The ancient engineers understood the principles of thermal siphoning long before the word physics was ever written in a textbook. They knew that warm air rises and cool air sinks. By strategically placing these shafts, they created a natural lung. Even when 20,000 people were living here, even when their lamps were burning and their ovens were hot, the air remained fresh. It was a masterclass in atmospheric management, hidden in the dark. But the engineering miracle doesn't stop at the air. Look at the wells. The residents of Derinkuyu were brilliant, but they were also paranoid. They knew that if an enemy found their city, the first thing they would do is try to poison the water supply. So, the engineers designed a system that was impossible to sabotage. They dug wells that did not reach the surface. Instead, these wells were fed by underground aquifers, tapped into deep within the city's lower levels. To the world above, there was no sign of water. But to the people below, there was an endless supply of life, cool and pure, protected by 80 feet of solid stone. You can still see the grooves in the rock where the ropes once rubbed, day after day, year after year, as buckets were hauled up from the deep. Those grooves are the signature of a civilization that refused to die of thirst. Now, let us run our hands along the walls of this narrow corridor. Feel the texture. It is remarkably smooth. The tough rock, when it is first exposed to air, is relatively soft, almost like compacted ash. But as it ages, as it breathes, it hardens. It becomes a shell. The builders knew this. They worked with the rock's own nature. They carved the rooms with curved ceilings, not just for aesthetics, but because an arch is the strongest shape in nature. Every arch you see here is a mathematical shield, distributing the weight of the mountain away from the center and into the pillars. They were building a cathedral of safety, using the earth itself as their primary material. How did they remove the debris? This is the question that haunts the minds of modern engineers. 2.5 million cubic feet of rock was carved out of this space. That is enough stone to build a small mountain of its own. And yet, there is no sign of it on the surface. No massive piles of waste, no trail of dust. It is as if the rock simply vanished. Did they grind it into fine sand and scatter it across the plains at night? Did they carry it miles away in the shadows to hide the location of their sanctuary? Every basket of stone carried out was a risk. Every trail of dust was a potential death sentence. The engineering was not just about the digging, it was about the disappearing. They built a city, and then they made the evidence of that city go away. Wait here in the shadow of this pillar. Listen to the structure. You can feel the intent in every corner. The way the floor slopes just enough to let water drain into secret cisterns. The way the stairs are cut with a specific rhythm to prevent a person from running too fast in the dark. This was a machine for living, a perfectly balanced ecosystem where humans, livestock, and history could survive the impossible. They had no computers, no steel beams, no electricity. They only had the stone, the light of a small flame, and an understanding of the world that we have long since forgotten. We call them ancient, but as we stand in the center of their miracle, we realize that they were masters of a craft we can barely comprehend. The city of Derinkuyu is a silent witness to what happens when human genius is pushed to the edge by necessity. It is a reminder that the greatest miracles are often built in the dark, away from the eyes of the world, carved into the very bones of the earth. The machine is still working. The air is still flowing. The stone is still holding. And as we prepare to move toward the next mystery, the mystery of the hidden doors, let the weight of this engineering sink into your mind. You are inside a miracle, and the miracle is breathing with you. We are descending further now, leaving behind the dry upper chambers. The air here is different. It carries a dampness, a cool humidity that clings to the skin like a wet shroud. We are approaching the lifeline of this stone giant, the element that allowed 20,000 souls to defy the desert above. The water from the deep. In the world outside, in the sun-drenched plains of Cappadocia, water is a gift from the sky. It is the rain that feeds the grapes, the rivers that carve the valleys. But for those within Derinkuyu, the sky was a distant memory, and the rain was a stranger. To survive here, they had to look downward, into the very veins of the earth. They had to find the water that the mountain had been hiding for millennia. Imagine standing at the edge of one of these internal wells. The darkness inside the shaft is absolute. You drop a small pebble, and you wait. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds, and then a soft, hollow plink. That sound was the heartbeat of the city. As long as that sound remained, the civilization remained. The engineering of these wells is nothing short of a silent masterpiece. These are not the typical wells you would find in a village square. No. These shafts were designed with a desperate ingenuity. They do not all reach the surface. Some stop midway through the levels, while others plunge directly into the aquifers deep below the 18th floor. This was a calculated defense. If an invading army were to find the surface openings of the ventilation shafts, their first instinct would be to pour poison down, to choke the city with foul water. But the architects of Derinkuyu had already anticipated this fear. Most of the city's water sources were completely disconnected from the surface. They were secret reservoirs, fed by the slow filtration of the volcanic rock, a natural purification system that provided water as clear as crystal, and as safe as the stone itself. Run your hand along the rim of the well. Do you feel those deep grooves? Those are not decorations. Those are the scars of survival. For hundreds of years, thick hemp ropes were pulled across this stone, day and night. Imagine the sound of the wooden buckets scraping against the walls of the shaft. The rhythmic creak of the pulley. The heavy splash as the bucket broke the surface of the underground pool far below. Every drop of water brought up from the deep was precious. It was used for drinking, for cooking the communal stews, and for the livestock kept in the upper tiers. There was no waste here. The geometry of the city included secret channels, small gutters carved into the floors to catch every spill, every overflow, and direct it back into cisterns. It was a closed loop, a perfect ecosystem of thrift and necessity. Think of the children who lived here. Their job might have been to carry small clay jars from the wells to the living quarters. Walking through these dark tunnels, the water sloshing gently in their jars, the only sound in the oppressive silence. To them, water didn't come from a tap or a stream. It came from the heart of the rock. It was a miracle that happened every time they lowered a rope. As we linger by this well, listen to the echo. The shafts also served as another set of acoustic tubes. If you whisper into the mouth of the well, your voice travels down to the very bottom, vibrating through the water, and up again. It is a haunting sensation, as if the water itself is listening to your thoughts. What happens to a mind when its only source of life is hidden hundreds of feet underground? There is a deep, psychological comfort in knowing that the earth is providing for you. The water from the deep wasn't just a chemical necessity, it was a spiritual reassurance. It was proof that the mountain was not their tomb, but their protector. In the deeper levels, near the 18th floor, the water is at its coldest. It stays at a constant temperature, untouched by the seasons of the sun. Whether it was a scorching summer above, or a freezing Anatolian winter, the water in Derinkuyu remained the same. It was a constant in a world of variables. A steady anchor for 20,000 people drifting in the dark. Look at the walls surrounding the well. You might see small carvings, simple crosses, or geometric patterns. These were prayers. Blessings for the water. In the silence of the deep, the act of drawing water became a ritual, a sacred dialogue between the thirsty and the earth. The builders knew that without this water, their fortress was nothing but a hollow grave. So they treated the wells with the highest respect. They were the most guarded spaces in the entire city. No one approached the water without reason. No one dirted the area around the shaft. It was the most disciplined part of their existence. We are standing now in a small chamber adjacent to the main well. This was likely a distribution point. A place where the heavy buckets were emptied into smaller vessels. The floor here is worn particularly smooth. You can almost see the ghosts of the people standing in line, their faces illuminated by the dim orange glow of their lamps, waiting for their share of the deep. The silence here is punctuated only by the occasional drip. Drip, drip. Each drop is a clock, marking the slow passage of an era. A reminder that time moves differently when you are waiting for the world above to become safe again. Let us leave the well now, and carry the memory of its cool breath with us. As we move toward the next corridor, remember the ropes, the grooves, and the crystal-clear miracle of the deep. Because without the water, the 20,000 residents would have been nothing more than shadows. The water made them real. The water kept them human. And as the city continues to breathe around us, we realize that the most powerful thing in Derinkuyu wasn't the stone, it was the liquid life that flowed through its veins. We move now from the life-giving wells to the silent guardians of the passage. We are standing before the most iconic symbol of this underground sanctuary. The rolling stone sentinels. In every ancient fortress, the gate is the weakest point. A wooden door can be burned. An iron gate can be battered. But here, in the winding arteries of Derinkuyu, the gates were made of the very mountain itself. Imagine a massive, circular slab of solid rock, 5 feet in diameter, 2 feet thick, weighing nearly 1,000 pounds. A giant wheel of stone, waiting in the shadows to seal the fate of anyone who dares to follow. Look closely at the surface of this stone wheel. It isn't smooth like the walls. It is rough, pitted, and heavy with a terrifying purpose. This is not just a door. It is a finality. The engineering of these sentinels is a masterclass in defensive paranoia. Every level of this 18-story city has these doors, sometimes 20 or more on a single floor. They sit in specially carved tracks, deep grooves in the floor that allowed the stone to roll smoothly, yet kept it perfectly balanced. Pause for a moment, and imagine the sound. When the warning came, when the whispers traveled through the acoustic tubes that an enemy was near, these doors were rolled into place. Gron, gron. The sound would have been like thunder trapped in a box. A deep, guttural roar of stone grinding against stone, vibrating through the floors, through the feet of every man, woman, and child. And then, thud. The door reaches its seat. The passage is gone. The most chilling detail about these sentinels is how they were designed to be operated. If you look at the center of the stone, you will see a small, circular hole. This wasn't for a handle. This was a viewport and a leverage point. A wooden beam would be inserted, allowing the people inside to roll the massive weight into place. But here is the truth that makes the breath catch in your throat. These doors, these massive wheels, can only be opened or closed from the inside. From the outside, from the perspective of an invader, there is nothing to grab. No latch, no hinge, no gap to wedge a crowbar. It is just a flat, impenetrable wall of rock, perfectly fitted into the tunnel. Once that stone rolled shut, the world outside ceased to exist for those within. You were safe, but you were also buried. You were protected, but you were also a prisoner of your own sanctuary. Think of the psychological weight of that stone. To stand behind it, hearing the muffled shouts of an army on the other side, knowing that only a few feet of rock separates you from death. The silence behind the door would be different from the silence of the rest of the city. It would be a sharp, electric silence. A silence of held breaths and racing hearts. 20,000 people, trusting their lives to these stone wheels. Trusting that the carvers had measured the tracks correctly. Trusting that the stone wouldn't crack under its own immense weight. Every time a door closed, it was a contract with the earth. Protect us, they prayed. And we will give you our sun, our sky, our freedom. As we walk around the back of the door, notice the specialized lock mechanism. Small stone wedges that could be jammed into the track to prevent the wheel from being rolled back, even from the inside. This was a city of layers. If the first door failed, they would retreat to the second. If the second failed, the third. A labyrinth of stone sentinels, each one buying them a few more hours, a few more days of life. The sentinels also had a secret function. The small hole in the center was also a murder hole. An archer or a spearman could stand behind the 1,000-pound shield and strike at anyone trying to bypass the door. It was a fortress that fought back, while remaining perfectly still. Imagine the darkness of the passage when the door is shut. The only light comes from that tiny hole in the center, a single, lonely beam of light piercing the gloom like a needle. You look through it, and you see the flicker of an enemy's torch, the glint of a blade, the shadow of a threat. And you know that as long as the stone holds, you are invisible. The carvers who created these wheels were not just laborers. They were artists of defense. They had to select a specific type of rock, harder than the surrounding tuff, to ensure the doors wouldn't crumble during an attack. They had to transport these 1,000-pound slabs through narrow, winding tunnels, moving them into place with nothing but ropes, rollers, and raw human willpower. Every stone sentinel we pass is a monument to a time when humanity was hunted. A time when the only way to stay alive was to become as solid, as cold, and as immovable as the mountain itself. Touch the edge of the stone. It feels cold. It feels ancient. It feels like it is still waiting for the command to roll. Thousands of years have passed, the enemies are long gone, the empires have turned to dust, but the sentinels remain. They are still on guard, protecting a city that is now only filled with echoes and shadows. We are moving past the last door on this level now. The tunnel ahead grows even narrower, the ceiling lower. We are heading into the heart of the daily life, the places where the 20,000 ate, slept, and dreamed of the surface. But the memory of the stone wheels stays with us. A reminder that in Derinkuyu, safety was something you had to roll into place, with sweat, with muscle, and with an ironclad resolve. Listen to the floor as we walk. Do you hear the faint, hollow ring? That is the empty track of a sentinel. A ghost of a door that once stood between a civilization and its end. The shadows are deepening. The light is fading. But we are not alone. The sentinels are watching. They have always been watching. We have spent time with the stone, with the wells, and with the doors. But now, we must confront the why. We must sit in the shadows and ask ourselves a question that the earth has been keeping secret for centuries. What kind of terror, what kind of sustained, unrelenting fear, forces a civilization to abandon the sun? In history, we often read about raids. Nomadic tribes sweeping across the plains, a quick flash of bronze, a cloud of dust, and then they are gone. To survive a raid, you need a wall. You need a cellar. You need a place to hide for a week, maybe 2. But Derinkuyu is not a cellar. It is not a temporary hiding place. Derinkuyu is the architecture of a nightmare that never ends. Look at the sheer scale of the organization around us. You do not carve 18 levels into solid volcanic ash for a threat that lasts a fortnight. You do not build ventilation systems for 20,000 people if you expect to go home next month. No. The terror that built this city was sustained. It was a shadow that lived on the horizon for generations. It was the knowledge that, in the world above, someone was always coming. Imagine the mental landscape of a child born here, in the quiet of the 9th level. To them, the surface was not a place of beauty, but a place of exposure. The open sky was a vulnerability. The wind was a warning. They were taught from their first breath that safety is found in the dark, and death travels in the light. This is a profound shift in the human spirit. We are a species of the sun, but here, in the sustained terror, we became a species of the stone. Who were they running from? The history books give us names. The Hittites, the Phrygians, the Persians, the Romans, the early Christians escaping Arab raids. Each era brought its own brand of fire and sword to the plains of Cappadocia. But for the people living in these tunnels, the names didn't matter. Only the terror mattered. It was a terror that moved slowly. An invading army would camp on the surface, burning the crops, cutting down the olive trees, waiting for the people to emerge. They would stay for months. And the people below, they would wait. Think of the discipline required to stay silent while an army walks over your head. To keep 20,000 people, and their animals, and their fears, perfectly still. To cook only at night, or use the deepest ventilation shafts so the smoke would be invisible by the time it reached the surface. This was not just hiding. This was a grand, collective performance of invisibility. The terror was also internal. The terror of the lamp going out. The terror of the air growing thin. The terror of a neighbor's cough echoing too loudly through the acoustic tubes. Every day was a battle against the crushing weight of the unknown. Let us walk into this small, side chamber. It is empty now. But feel the walls. They feel cold, yet they hold the heat of the thousands of souls who once huddled here. In the architecture of Derinkuyu, there is no room for ego. No room for grand displays. There is only the geometry of survival. Why did they stay? Why not run to the mountains? Why not flee to the sea? Because the plains of Anatolia were a crossroads of empires. There was nowhere to run that the shadow wouldn't follow. So they ran into the only place the shadow couldn't reach. They ran into the heart of the mother. The earth. As the years turned into decades, the terror became a culture. The people of Derinkuyu likely developed their own songs, their own stories, all whispered in the low light of the oil lamps. Stories of a surface world that was beautiful, but forbidden. A paradise lost, guarded by the sword of an endless enemy. This is the real engineering miracle of Derinkuyu. Not the stone, but the human mind's ability to adapt to a life of sustained fear. To find joy in the dark. To find community in a cage. To trust the person next to you with your very breath. We are standing at a point where the stairs descend even further. Into the 10th level, the 11th, down to the dark heart of the 18th. With every step, the terror of the surface world feels further away, but the weight of the stone feels heavier. Pause here, and listen to the silence. It is not an empty silence. It is a silence filled with the echoes of 20,000 people waiting for the world to be safe again. A silence that has lasted for centuries. The people of Derinkuyu eventually left. The threats faded, the empires changed, and the sun finally became a friend again instead of an enemy. But they left behind this monument to their fear. A city that tells us, more than any book, what it feels like to be truly hunted. As we move toward the next chapter of our journey, carry this thought with you. We all have our own Derinkuyu. We all have our inner tunnels where we hide from the terrors of our own world. But few of us have ever had to carve our fear into the bone of a mountain. The light of our lamp is flickering now. The air is growing colder. The terror is an old story, but the stone remembers everything. Leaving behind the world of recorded history and entering the world of legend. The air here feels heavy, almost ancient, as if it has been trapped in this stone lung for 3,000 years. Here, the walls are different. The architecture is cruder, more primal, more urgent. We are no longer walking through a Byzantine refuge. We are walking through the echoes of the Hittites. To understand Derinkuyu, we must understand the people who first dared to scratch the surface of this earth. Long before the Christians fled the Romans, long before the Arabs swept across these plains, there was an empire of chariots and iron. The Hittites. A civilization that ruled Anatolia when the world was young. It was their hands, their bronze tools, that first discovered the secret of the tough rock. Imagine the scene, 3,500 years ago. A Hittite engineer stands on the dry, dusty plains of Cappadocia. The sun is a white-hot disk in a pale sky. But beneath his feet, he knows there is a hidden softness. He takes a chisel, not of steel, but of hardened bronze. He strikes the rock. Tink, tink, tink. The rock gives way. It is not solid granite, it is volcanic ash, compressed by time into a material that is easy to carve, yet strong enough to hold a mountain. In those early days, this was not a city. It was a series of simple cellars. A place to keep the grain cool, to store the wine, to hide the precious oils from the heat of the summer. But the Hittites were a people of war. They knew that a house on the surface is a target. A house underground is a secret. Look at the markings on this pillar, right here in the corner of the 10th level. These are not the clean, organized chisel marks of the later centuries. These are deep, uneven, rhythmic slashes. Each one represents a breath, a bead of sweat, a moment of pure, manual labor. The Hittites didn't have blueprints. They didn't have surveying tools. They had only their eyes, their intuition, and their fear. Why did they keep digging? Why go beyond a simple storage room? Because the shadows on the horizon were growing longer. The Phrygians were coming from the west. The Kafka tribes were raiding from the north. The great king in Hattusa needed a place for his people to disappear. Think about the psychological shift that happened in this very room. One day, this was just a storehouse for grain. The next day, it was a sanctuary for a family. They realized that if they could dig 10 feet, they could dig 20. If they could hold a family, they could hold a village. The idea of the underground city was born here, in the Bronze Age, out of the necessity of an empire that was always under threat. Pause for a moment and listen to the stone. It remembers the Hittite tongue, a language that has been dead for millennia, yet its vibrations are still trapped in these pores. What did they say as they worked in the dim light of fat-soaked torches? Did they speak of their gods, the storm god who roared in the sky while they hid in the earth? Did they feel like they were entering the womb of the goddess Cybele, seeking her protection? In the 10th level, the rooms are smaller. The ceilings are lower. You can feel the mountain pressing down on you with a much greater weight than in the upper tiers. The air is cooler, more static. There is no movement here, no draft. Only the eternal, unmoving presence of the rock. The Hittites were masters of concealment. They didn't just dig down, they dug sideways. They created the first labyrinths. They understood that if an enemy entered the darkness, they must never find their way back out. These early corridors are intentionally confusing. A turn to the left leads to a dead end. A turn to the right leads to a drop-off. This is the primal geometry of survival, a puzzle carved in tuff. As we run our fingers over these ancient tool marks, we are touching the very beginning of human resilience. We are touching the moment when humanity decided that the earth was not just something to walk upon, but something to live within. It is a haunting thought that while the great pyramids were being built in Egypt, these people were building a pyramid in reverse. A monument of emptiness, stretching deep into the heart of the world. What happened to the Hittites who lived here? Did they eventually leave when their empire collapsed? Or did they simply fade away, their bones becoming part of the very dust we walk upon? History is silent on their fate, but the stone is not. The stone tells us that they were here. They were clever. And they were terrified. Every group that came after them, the Phrygians, the Romans, the early Christians, they all found these Hittite hollows. They didn't have to start from scratch. They simply followed the echoes. They took the Hittite rooms and made them larger. They took the Hittite tunnels and made them longer. Derinkuyu is a collaborative masterpiece, a conversation between civilizations across thousands of years. And it all began here, with a single, quiet strike of a bronze chisel. Stay in this chamber for a moment longer. Close your eyes. Imagine the smell of the Hittite torches, the sound of their leather sandals on the rock. The city is not empty. It is full of the people who haven't been here for 3,000 years. Their ghosts are the silence. Their breath is the air. We are standing on the foundations of human survival. And as we prepare to descend even further, to the levels where the city became a machine, let us pay our respects to the first carvers. The ones who looked at the darkness and saw a home. The path ahead is steep. The light is fading. But the echoes of the Hittites, they will lead us down. We move away from the ancient, lonely echoes of the Hittites and descend into a space that feels surprisingly alive. Here, the tunnels widen. The ceilings rise. And for a moment, the oppressive weight of the mountain seems to lift, replaced by the memory of a bustling crowd. We have arrived at the heart of the city's social life. The ghostly marketplace. In the world above, a marketplace is a place of sun and wind. A place of bright colors, of shouting traders, and the smell of fresh dust and livestock. But here, 60 meters beneath the surface, the marketplace was a masterpiece of organized silence. It was the lungs of the community, the place where 20,000 people didn't just survive, but lived. Imagine standing in the center of this great hall. Your lamp casts long, flickering shadows against the walls. In every direction, there are small, rectangular niches carved into the stone. These were the stalls. No wooden tables, no colorful awnings. Just the cold, eternal shelf of the tough rock. Close your eyes, and let the silence tell you what used to be here. In this corner, the air would have been thick with the scent of roasted chickpeas and dried figs. You can still see the circular indentations in the floor where massive clay jars once sat, filled to the brim with grain, lentils, and the precious olive oil that kept their lamps burning. The stone is stained darker here, a permanent shadow of the liquids that were traded, drop by drop, in the dim light. Across the hall, imagine the clink of metal, the sound of a merchant weighing out small pieces of silver, or trading a hand-woven wool blanket for a bag of salt. There was no money as we know it, only the value of what could be carried down the stairs. Every item in this market was a victory over the darkness. Every loaf of bread, every jug of wine, had traveled through the labyrinth to reach this spot. How did they keep the peace in a market with no sun? The order here was absolute. You can see small holes carved near the entrance of each stall, likely for tethering small animals, goats or sheep brought down from the upper tiers to be traded or slaughtered. The marketplace was a symphony of smells, of damp wool, of fermented grapes, and the metallic tang of the earth itself. Look at the floor beneath your feet. It is uneven, worn into shallow valleys by the passage of millions of footsteps. Think of the sandals, made of rough leather, scuffing against this rock for centuries. This marketplace was not built in a day. It was worn into existence by the sheer necessity of human contact. People came here not just for food, but for news. Is it safe outside? Has the army moved on? Did the rain come to the valleys? These questions would have been whispered in the shadows of these pillars. A marketplace of secrets. A place where a whisper could be as valuable as a bag of grain. The acoustic tubes we saw earlier lead directly here, allowing the elders in the upper levels to listen to the mood of the people, ensuring that hope remained alive even when the light was fading. In the center of the room, there is a large, flat stone table. It is nearly 10 feet long, perfectly level. Archaeologists believe this was the communal grain mill. Imagine the sound, the heavy, grinding roar of a massive stone wheel being turned by hand hour after hour. Gron, gron, gron. The sound would vibrate through the walls, through the very bones of the city. It was the sound of life being sustained, one handful of flour at a time. There is a strange beauty in this ghostly market. It reminds us that humanity cannot be simplified into mere survival. Even in a hole in the ground, we seek to trade. We seek to gather. We seek to create a center. This room was the center of the world for those 20,000. Outside, empires were burning. Cities were being razed. But here, in level 11, a mother was still picking out the best lentils for her family's supper. A father was still trading a carved toy for a piece of fruit. The silence of the marketplace now is the most haunting silence in all of Derinkuyu. It is the silence of a conversation that was suddenly interrupted. As you walk through the empty stalls, you feel as if you are just a few minutes too late. As if the merchants have just stepped into the next room, and if you wait long enough, they will return with their lamps and their laughter. But they will not return. They have left their stalls to the dust, and their millstone to the shadows. They have taken their whispers back to the surface, back to the sun. And we are left with only the architecture of their hunger. Let us linger here, in the middle of this vast, empty hall. Feel the cool draft moving across the floor. It carries the scent of nothing. Only the clean, cold breath of the mountain, The marketplace is closed. But the city is still wide awake, waiting for us to go deeper. We are moving toward the stairs now, away from the memory of the crowd, and toward the places where the individual soul sought its own peace. The journey is long. The rock is thick. But the story is only halfway told. We have left the marketplace and entered a space of profound discipline. A chamber that proves Derinkuyu was never a temporary refuge, but a permanent commitment to the future. This is the underground schoolroom. Pause at the entrance. Look at the symmetry of this room. Unlike the living quarters, which are often irregular and cramped, this hall is long, rectangular, and intentional. Along the walls, you see continuous ledges of stone, carved at exactly the right height for a person to sit. These were the desks of a generation that grew up in the shadows. Think of the children. Children who had never seen a forest, never chased a butterfly, never felt the direct heat of the sun on their skin. Their outside was this room. Their sky was this flat, hand-carved ceiling. For them, education wasn't just about reading or writing. It was about preserving the memory of a world that was currently off limits. Imagine a class in session, 200 feet beneath the earth. The only light comes from a few oil lamps placed in niches behind the teacher. The flickering orange light casts giant, dancing shadows of the children against the far wall. The air smells of soot, old parchment, and the damp, cool breath of the mountain. What did they learn here? They learned the geography of the surface as if it were a myth. There are things called trees, the teacher might whisper, and they have leaves that change color when the world grows cold. To a child of Derinkuyu, a tree was as fantastical as a dragon. They studied the stars by drawing them in the dust on the floor, memorizing the constellations they couldn't see, so that one day, when it was safe to emerge, they wouldn't be strangers to their own sky. But there was a more practical side to this school. Survival was a subject here. They were taught the map of the tunnels. They learned which ventilation shafts led to water, and which led to the surface. They learned the language of the acoustic tubes, the secret codes of whistles and taps that could signal danger or safety. A child's graduation wasn't marked by a scroll, but by their ability to navigate the labyrinth in total darkness. Run your hand along these stone benches. The rock is incredibly smooth here, polished not by tools, but by the constant shifting of nervous young bodies. In some places, if you look very closely with your light, you can see faint scratches. A bored student, 300 years ago, might have used a small pebble to carve a tiny bird, or a sun with rays, into the side of their desk. A silent rebellion against the gray reality of their lives. There is a central stone structure here, a sort of pulpit or a high desk. This was the place of the instructor. From here, their voice would carry easily through the room, aided by the natural acoustics of the arched ceiling. The teacher wasn't just an educator, they were the keeper of the flame. They held the collective history of the people. The stories of the Hittites, the Roman persecutions, the long migrations. If the schoolroom died, the civilization would forget why it was hiding in the first place. The discipline in this room must have been absolute. In a city of 20,000, space and resources were tight. Silence was a duty. The children were taught to speak in low, resonant tones that didn't travel too far. They were taught the architecture of restraint. To be a student in Derinkuyu was to be a soldier of the mind, preparing for a day that might not come for generations. Consider the psychological weight on the teacher. To look into the wide, dark adapted eyes of 50 children and tell them that they are safe, while knowing that a massive stone wall is the only thing between them and an invading army. To teach them about light in a room where the shadows never leave. This schoolroom also served a spiritual purpose. During the hours when lessons weren't held, it was a place of quiet reflection. A place to sit and breathe. The sheer order of the room, the straight lines, the rhythmic benches, offered a sense of stability in an unstable world. It was a reminder that even in the dark, humanity demands structure. We demand growth. As we move toward the back of the room, we see a smaller, adjacent chamber. This was likely a library or a scriptorium, a place where scrolls were kept in dry, stone niches. Here, scholars would toil by lamplight, copying ancient texts, ensuring that the wisdom of the surface wasn't lost to the dampness of the deep. The ink would have been made from soot and oil, the parchment precious and rare. Every word written here was a defiance. A statement that the mind cannot be buried. Let us sit on one of these stone benches for a moment. Close your eyes. Hear the ghost of a lesson being taught. The soft murmur of voices reciting a prayer, or a mathematical formula, or a poem about the wind. The schoolroom is empty now, but the intent remains. The rock still holds the vibration of that collective learning. Derinkuyu was not just a hiding hole. It was an academy of resilience. These benches, these walls, they educated a people to be stronger than the mountain. They turned fear into knowledge, and darkness into a classroom. The lessons are over. The children are gone. But the silence of this room is different from the silence of the tunnels. It is a thoughtful silence. A silence that remembers the questions of the curious and the patience of the wise. We are standing up now, our light flickering against the ceiling one last time. We are leaving the schoolroom and heading deeper, where the city's faith was forged in the fire of its trials. The stairs are steep, the rock is old, and the journey continues. We have descended past the classrooms, past the echoes of children's voices, and we have entered the sanctuary of the soul. A place where the heavy silence of the earth is transformed into something sacred. Religious solitude. In the world above, faith often looks toward the sky. We build cathedrals with spires that reach for the clouds, temples on mountain tops, and mosques with domes that reflect the vastness of the heavens. But here, in the deep heart of Derinkuyu, faith had to look inward. It had to find its light not in the sun, but in the absolute darkness of the stone. Stand in the center of this cruciform chamber. Look at the ceiling. Unlike the living rooms or the storage pits, this space has been carved with an almost obsessive attention to detail. The arches are perfect. The pillars are slender, elegant, reaching up to hold the weight of 1,000 years of prayer. This wasn't just a place to hide. This was a place to remember why they were hiding. Imagine the scene during a time of siege. The city is full, 20,000 people are breathing the same filtered air. The stress, the fear, the claustrophobia would be reaching its peak. And then, they come here. They step into this chapel, leaving the noise of the marketplace and the communal kitchens behind. As they enter, the temperature seems to drop a few degrees. The air is still. There are no drafts here. Only the smell of cold stone and the faint, lingering scent of beeswax from 1,000 forgotten candles. Think of a lone figure, sitting on this stone ledge. Their lamp is turned low, just a tiny, golden spark in a sea of black. They are not just hiding from an army. They are seeking a different kind of solitude. A religious solitude where the walls of the cave do not feel like a prison, but like the protective hands of the divine. In this room, the geometry of fear we talked about earlier transforms into the geometry of grace. The cross-shaped plan of the chapel was not just symbolic. It was structural. It allowed for a larger, more open space without the risk of collapse. The ancient architects used faith to solve the problems of physics. Every arch is a prayer that the mountain will hold. Every pillar is a testament to a hope that cannot be buried. Look at the small alcoves carved into the walls at eye level. If you look closely with your light, you can see the faint, dark stains left by oil lamps. This is where the icons would have been placed. Not painted on canvas, but carved directly into the rock, or painted with simple, earthy pigments. Red ochre, charcoal, white lime. Images of saints and protectors, their eyes wide, staring back at the faithful in the dim light. To pray here, 200 feet underground, is to experience a unique kind of vulnerability. You are completely at the mercy of the earth. You are disconnected from the stars, from the moon, from the passage of the seasons. Time here is measured only by the steady, rhythmic drip of water from the ceiling. Drip, drip, drip. Each drop is a reminder of eternity. In this religious solitude, the people of Derinkuyu found their strength. They believed that as long as the prayers continued, the city would remain invisible. They saw themselves as the keepers of a sacred flame, hidden in the belly of the mountain. Their exile was not just a punishment, it was a pilgrimage into the depths of their own resilience. We pass a small, circular basin carved into the floor near the entrance. A baptismal font. Imagine a new life being welcomed here, in the dark. The cool, clear water from the deep wells being poured over a child's head. A promise made to a new generation that even if they were born in the stone, they belonged to the light. The contrast between the cold, hard rock and the soft, fragile life of a newborn is the ultimate story of Derinkuyu. There are no windows here. No stained glass to catch the morning sun. But for those who sat here in silence, the rock itself became a window. They looked into the grain of the stone, the patterns of the volcanic ash, and saw the hand of a creator who had provided them with a sanctuary when the world above had turned to fire. Listen to the silence now. It is different here, isn't it? It is a heavy silence, but it is also peaceful. It is the silence of a soul that has found its center. Even if you are not a person of faith, you can feel the intent of this room. You can feel the thousands of hours of meditation, the thousands of whispered hopes that have been absorbed by these walls. As we prepare to leave this chapel, notice the doorway. It is low, forcing you to bow your head as you exit. A final gesture of humility before you return to the winding tunnels. The religious solitude of level 13 is a bridge. A bridge between the fear of the levels above and the absolute, dark mystery of the levels below. We are walking out now, our footsteps sounding loud in the stillness, where the city's secrets become even more specialized. The light of our torch feels smaller now, but our spirit feels larger. We have seen the heart of the mountain, and the heart of the people who called it home. The stairs are waiting. The rock is ancient. And the prayers, they still linger in the air, like a scent you can almost, but not quite, identify. It is the silence of a missing mountain. Take a look around this vast cavern. Look at the height of the ceiling, the width of the walls, the depth of the chambers that stretch into the blackness. Millions of cubic feet of solid volcanic rock were once here, and now they are gone. Welcome to the mystery of the vanishing debris. In every grand construction project of the ancient world, there is a trail. When the Egyptians built the pyramids, they left behind hills of limestone chips. When the Romans built their roads, they left quarries scarred and broken. But here, in the heart of Cappadocia, there is no trail. There are no massive mounds of waste. No hills of excavated stone. It is as if the city was not dug, but whispered out of existence. Think of the sheer physics of this achievement. To create a space for 20,000 people, 18 levels deep, requires the removal of nearly 3 million cubic feet of rock. That is enough material to build a small mountain of its own. If you were to pile that debris on the surface, it would be visible from miles away. A giant, dusty signal to every invader, every nomad, and every enemy that something massive was happening beneath the earth. But the builders of Derinkuyu were masters of invisibility. Imagine the discipline. Every day, for years, for decades, thousands of workers were carving into this tuff. Every strike of their chisel produced a handful of gray, powdery ash. Every hour, baskets were filled. But where did those baskets go? If they had dumped the debris outside the entrances, they would have been discovered in a single afternoon. So they had to become shadows. Some historians believe they carried the waste out only at night, under the cover of darkness, and scattered it across the agricultural fields. The soft volcanic ash would blend with the soil, eventually disappearing into the dirt of the plains. A city, hidden in the very soil that fed it. But others suspect a more complex engineering solution. Walk with me to the corner of this chamber. Notice this vertical shaft. It isn't for air, and it isn't for water. It is tilted at a strange angle. Some believe these were waste chutes. Deep, internal pockets within the mountain where the debris was moved from one level to another, filling up natural caverns or unused tunnels. The builders were not just digging a city, they were playing a game of three-dimensional chess with the earth. The vanishing debris is a testament to the psychological endurance of these people. Imagine being a worker, deep in the 14th level. You have spent your entire day in the dim glow of a lamp, carving a room that your children will one day call home. Your lungs are full of dust. Your muscles ache from the weight of the stone. And yet, you cannot simply throw the waste away. You must hide it. Every basket of rock is a secret you must carry. The architecture of Derinkuyu is an architecture of subtraction. It is a sculpture on a titanic scale. Most cities are built by adding material, stone upon stone, brick upon brick. But Derinkuyu was built by taking away. It is a city of emptiness. A city defined by what is not there. And the mystery of where that nothingness went is what makes this place so haunting. Stay here in the center of the hall. Listen to the dust. Even now, if you run your fingers along the floor, you will find a fine, silty powder. This is the breath of the mountain. It is the leftovers of the great subtraction. Every grain of dust was once part of a solid wall. Every speck was once a barrier that had to be removed to make room for a human life. How long did it take? How many millions of basket loads were carried up those narrow, winding stairs? The logistics of the vanishing debris suggest a society of incredible unity. There was no room for laziness. No room for error. If one person left a trail of dust on the surface, the entire 20,000 would be at risk. They were a civilization bound together by the silence of their waste. As we look at the smooth, arched ceilings of this level, we realize that the debris didn't just vanish into the fields. It vanished into the history of the people. It became the walls of their houses on the surface, the soil for their vineyards, the very ground they walked upon while the enemy searched for them in vain. They lived on top of their own subtraction. There is a lesson here. Sometimes, the greatest achievements are not what we show to the world, but what we manage to hide. The grandeur of Derinkuyu is not in its towers, for it has none. It is in its absence. It is in the millions of tons of stone that are no longer here. The air in this chamber is still. The dust has settled. The mystery remains, carved into the very emptiness that surrounds us. We are walking toward the stairs again. Our light reflecting off the thousands of chisel marks that once produced the vanishing debris. We are heading toward the 15th level, moving further away from the sun, and closer to the absolute heart of the machine. The stairs are steeper now. The rock is colder. And the silence, it is growing heavier with every step. We have descended past the frozen stillness of the upper tiers, and now we enter a realm of pure complexity. A place where the architecture is no longer about living, but about vanishing. Welcome to the network of shadows. In the world of the sun, a path is a promise. A road leads to a destination. But here, in the suffocating embrace of the deep, a path is a weapon. Every corridor we see stretching into the dark is part of a grand, calculated deception. Look at the tunnel to your left. It is wide, the ceiling is high, and it looks like a main thoroughfare. But if you follow it for 50 paces, it begins to shrink. The walls press in. The ceiling drops until you are on your knees. And then it ends. A solid wall of tough rock. A dead end. This was the architecture of the trap. The network of shadows was designed to turn an invader's strength into their greatest weakness. Imagine an enemy soldier, heavy with armor, carrying a flickering torch that barely cuts the gloom. He enters this level, and he is immediately lost. He sees 10 different openings. Which one leads to the grain stores? Which one leads to the wells? He doesn't know. If he chooses the wrong path, he is funneled into a kill zone, a narrow slit in the rock where a defender can strike from a hidden niche without ever being seen. The mountain is not just protecting the 20,000, it is actively hunting those who do not belong here. Wait here at this crossroads. Feel the draft of air moving across your face. It comes from 4 different directions at once. This level was the master switch of the city's circulation. The ancient engineers understood a truth we often forget. To move 20,000 people in a crisis, you cannot rely on a single staircase. You need a web. And so, they carved this network. Hidden crawl spaces that link this level to the schoolrooms 3 floors above. Secret trapdoors in the floors that drop directly into the water reservoirs. Slanted, narrow shafts that bypass the massive stone doors entirely. It is a city that exists in the gaps between things. A shadow world that functions on its own logic. Think of the psychological toll on the residents who walked these paths every day. They had to memorize the map of the shadows. They had to know which crack in the wall was a door, and which shadow was a trap. A child of Derinkuyu would grow up with a different kind of spatial awareness. They wouldn't navigate by landmarks, they would navigate by the feeling of the air, by the specific texture of the rock, by the rhythmic echo of their own footsteps. To them, this labyrinth wasn't confusing. It was home. But why 18 levels? Why this specific network at this specific depth? Perhaps because at level 15, the pressure of the earth creates a unique acoustic environment. Listen. Silence. And yet, if you press your ear to the wall, you can hear the city. You can hear the distant, muffled sound of a bucket being lowered 200 feet away. You can hear the low vibration of 1,000 whispers traveling through the ventilation shafts. The network of shadows was also a network of intelligence. A place where the city could listen to itself, monitoring its own heartbeat in the dark. Run your hand along the wall here. The stone is different. It is smoother, more polished. This wasn't done by tools, but by the constant, rhythmic passing of thousands of shoulders. For centuries, people moved through these shadows like ghosts. They didn't walk, they flowed. They learned the architecture of the silent step. A soft, sliding gait that minimized the sound of leather against stone. In this network, to be heard was to be found. And to be found was to die. As we move deeper into this web, the tunnels become even more irregular. Some are so narrow you must turn your body sideways to pass. Others open into small, circular chambers where 5 tunnels meet like the legs of a spider. In the center of one of these hubs, you feel a sense of profound vertigo. Which way is up? Which way is out? The network of shadows is designed to strip away your sense of direction, leaving you with nothing but the cold, unyielding reality of the stone. There are secrets hidden in the very floor of this level. Look down. See those small, rectangular depressions? Those were not for storage. Those were for sensors. Primitive, yet effective. A thin layer of dry sand would be placed in those pits. If an intruder walked through the tunnel, their footsteps would leave a mark in the sand, alerting the guards that a shadow had moved where it shouldn't. It was a city that watched its own floor. How many lives were saved by this complexity? How many armies gave up in frustration, unable to pierce the heart of the labyrinth? We will never know the full story of the battles fought in these shadows. But we can feel the intent. the desperation, the brilliance. The carvers who created this network were not just laborers, they were mathematicians of fear. They calculated exactly how much confusion was needed to keep a civilization alive. The light of our lamp is struggling now. The shadows here are thicker, more persistent. They seem to drink the light. In this network, the darkness is not an absence of light, it is a physical presence. It is a heavy, velvety curtain that stays draped over the rock forever. Stay still for a moment longer. Don't move your lamp. Let the network of shadows settle around you. Can you feel it? The sheer weight of the secrets held in these walls? Every inch of this level had to be planned. Every turn had to be measured. Every dead end had to be intentional. It is a masterpiece of the void. The people of Derinkuyu eventually left these shadows behind. They walked back up the stairs, into the light, and never looked back. But the network remains. It is still here, waiting in the cold silence of the 15th level. A labyrinth that has forgotten its people, but has not forgotten its purpose. To protect, to confuse, to hide. We are turning the final corner of this level now. Our path is beginning to slope downward again, toward the realm where the air grows even thinner, and the mystery grows even deeper. The network of shadows is behind us now, but its complexity still weighs on our minds, a reminder that the greatest fortresses are not built of stone, but of shadows. The stairs are narrow. The journey is reaching its climax. And the mountain, it is still holding its breath. We have passed through the engineering, we have seen the markets and the schools, but now, we must descend into something much deeper than stone. But more importantly, we are entering the mind of the trapped. Welcome to the psychology of the earth. Have you ever wondered, truly wondered, what it does to a human soul to live without a horizon? In the world of the sun, our identity is shaped by the vastness of the sky. We look up, and we see infinity. We look at the distant mountains, and we feel small, yet free. But here, 65 meters below the crust of Anatolia, the horizon is only 10 feet away. It is a wall of cold, volcanic ash. This constant proximity to the earth creates a unique mental landscape. The psychology of the earth is not about freedom, it is about the intense, crushing intimacy of survival. Think of the 20,000 souls who called this abyss home. Imagine the silence of their nights. In the world above, the night is never truly quiet. There is the wind in the trees, the distant howl of a wolf, the rustle of leaves. But here, the silence is a physical weight. It is absolute. It is a silence that rings in your ears until you can hear the blood pumping through your own veins. For those who lived here for months at a time, this silence became their sanctuary. They learned to love the weight of the mountain. While a surface dweller might feel claustrophobic, a resident of Derinkuyu felt protected. The psychology of the earth taught them that vastness was a threat, a place where enemies could see you from miles away. But smallness, darkness, and depth, these were their friends. The stone was not their cage, it was their armor. Walk slowly with me into this small chamber. Look at the ceiling. It is low, almost touching our heads. Feel the cold breath of the rock against your skin. In this 16th level, the air is thin and the thoughts are heavy. When you live in the dark, your other senses begin to bloom like nocturnal flowers. The people of Derinkuyu didn't just see this city, they felt it. They could hear the shape of a room by the way their voice bounced off the walls. They could smell the change in the weather on the surface by the subtle shift in the humidity of the ventilation shafts. Their minds became finely tuned instruments of the deep. But what about the dreams? What kind of dreams grow in a world without sun? Psychologists tell us that light is essential for our sense of hope. Yet, these people thrived here. Their dreams were not of the gray stone, but of the golden wheat fields they left behind. They carried the surface world inside them like a sacred flame. They were the keepers of a memory. Every time a father told his son about the blue of the sky, he was ensuring that the sun would never truly set, even in the deepest tier of the city. This duality, living in the dark while holding the light in their hearts, is the true miracle of their survival. Notice the way the corridors curve on this level. They don't turn sharply like modern hallways. They flow like the chambers of a heart. This was a psychological necessity. Hard angles are aggressive. They remind you of the man-made. But these curves mimic the organic shapes of nature, the womb, the cave. The architects knew that to keep 20,000 people sane, they had to make the city feel like a living thing. They didn't just carve a tunnel, they carved a feeling of belonging. Pause here and listen to your own breath. In, out, in, out. In the psychology of the earth, you realize that time moves differently. On the surface, time is a sundial. Here, time is a water drop. Drip, drip, drip. Every drop from the ceiling is a second ticking away in the dark. It is a slow, patient time. The people here learned the art of the long wait. They weren't just hiding for a day, they were waiting for history to change. They were waiting for empires to fall, for wars to end, for the world to become safe for their children. Think of the discipline required for such a life. To live in a city of 20,000 where every sound is a potential betrayal. They had to develop a collective psychology of restraint. No one shouted. No one ran. They moved like shadows, whispering their hopes into the tough rock. The mountain absorbed their fears, and in return, it gave them a silence that no army could pierce. As we move toward the next staircase, look at the mineral deposits on the walls. They glitter like stars in the beam of our light. To a child born on the 16th level, these were the only stars they knew. They would reach out and touch the cold, glowing minerals, and they would believe in a universe that was solid and deep and protective. Is it possible to feel lonely in a city of 20,000? Perhaps. But the psychology of the earth is a communal one. You are never truly alone when the same ceiling covers everyone you love. The rock connected them. The silence bound them. They were a single organism, breathing together, waiting together, surviving together in the heart of the world. We are descending now. The stairs are getting steeper. The air is growing sharper. But our minds are adjusting. We are beginning to think like the mountain. We are beginning to understand that the greatest strength is not found in the light, but in the resilience of the dark. Stay with me. Don't look back. The horizon is gone, but the truth is just ahead. The stairs are waiting. The silence is calling. And the psychology of the earth, it is finally becoming our own. We are now at the edge of the known world. But as we stand in this absolute stillness, we must confront a truth more haunting than the stone itself. The people who lived here did not just hide for a few weeks. They lived here. They died here. And most remarkably, they were born here. Welcome to the generations of the dark. Imagine a life that begins and ends without ever seeing a single sunrise. For centuries, there were children in Derinkuyu whose entire universe was defined by the reach of an oil lamp. To them, the concept of blue was a myth told by their grandparents. The concept of distance was how many levels you had to climb to reach the kitchens. These were the children of the stone. A subculture of humanity that adapted its eyes, its lungs, and its very soul to the rhythmic heartbeat of the mountain. Look at this small, carved indentation in the floor. It is smooth, worn down by years of movement. This was a play area. Can you imagine the sound of children's laughter echoing through these tunnels? A sound so out of place, yet so essential. They played games of hide-and-seek in a labyrinth that was built for the ultimate game of life and death. They didn't run across meadows, they ran through corridors of volcanic ash. Their world was gray, but their imagination had to be vibrant to survive. The generations of the dark developed a different kind of wisdom. They understood the language of the rock. A child of 10 would know by the smell of the air if a storm was brewing on the surface. They could feel the vibration of an army's horses miles away, simply by pressing their ear to a specific pillar on this level. Their senses were not dull, they were sharpened by the darkness. They saw things in the shadows that we, the people of the light, can never perceive. Think of the elders. The grandfathers who sat in these very alcoves, teaching the young how to carve the tuff without causing a collapse. They were the keepers of the surface memory. They would describe the feeling of wind, the way grass tickles your feet, the blinding brilliance of the midday sun. To the listeners, these were not weather reports. They were legends. They were stories of a paradise lost, a world they were being protected from, but also a world they were being denied. The psychology of these generations was one of profound collective patience. They were a people in waiting, a civilization in a state of suspended animation. They married in the chapels we saw earlier. They gave birth in the small side chambers. And when they passed away, they were often placed in deep, vertical niches in the lower levels, their bodies returning to the same stone that had sheltered them in life. They were born from the earth, and they stayed with the earth. Run your torchlight along this wall. See those tiny marks? Thousands of them, scratched into the rock. These are not just decorations. This is a calendar. A generation of people counting the days since they last saw the sky. 1 scratch, 1 day. 100 scratches, a season. 1,000 scratches, a life. The tragedy of the generations of the dark is the silence of their history. They left no books, no paintings on canvas, no grand monuments that the sun can shine upon. Their monument is the empty space they left behind. Their history is written in the smoothness of the stairs, in the soot on the ceilings, in the very air we are breathing now. We are inhaling the remnants of their size. How did they maintain their humanity? How did they not turn into monsters in the dark? The answer lies in their community. In the generations of the dark, no one was an individual. You were a part of the city. If you wasted water, everyone suffered. If you made a noise, everyone died. This created a bond of blood and stone that is almost impossible for us to comprehend. They were the ultimate practitioners of self-sacrifice. They lived in the dark so that their culture, their faith, and their people could one day return to the light. They were the guardians of the future, living in a permanent past. Pause here and feel the weight of their lives. Every breath you take in this 17th level was a breath they once took. Every shadow you see was a shadow they lived within. They were not just hiding. They were enduring. They were proving that the human spirit does not need a sun to remain bright. It only needs a purpose. The generations eventually ended. The day finally came when the stone doors were rolled back for the last time. The people walked out, blinking, their eyes burning in the forgotten brilliance of the day. They left the tunnels to the bats and the dust. But they left a part of themselves here. A haunting presence that still lingers in the corners of this 17th level. We are moving toward the final staircase now. The bottom of the world. The air is almost gone, the light is a mere spark. But we must go on. We must reach the end of their story. The stone is cold. The silence is absolute. And the generations of the dark, they are watching us from the shadows, waiting for us to remember them. The air here is no longer a living thing. It is a heavy, static weight that has been trapped in this pocket of the world for millennia. We are at the absolute bottom, 85 meters below the surface. This is the end of the human map. The final void. At this depth, the mountain no longer feels like a protector. It feels like a master. The pressure of the millions of tons of stone above is not a metaphor here, it is a physical sensation. Your ears ring with the density of the silence. Your chest feels the constriction of the narrow oxygen. This is where the ambition of the carvers met the limits of the earth. They could go no further. The rock became too hard, the air too thin, the darkness too absolute. Look at the walls in this deepest chamber. They are different. They lack the careful polish of the upper levels. The chisel marks here are frantic, deep, and irregular. It is as if the people working here were in a race against their own fading strength. In the dim light of an oil lamp, this room looks like the inside of a rib cage. A skeletal sanctuary at the very edge of existence. Imagine the silence of this place when the city was full. While thousands lived and whispered in the levels above, only a few ever came down this far. This was a place for the guardians. The ones who had to listen to the earth itself. If you sit perfectly still on this cold floor, and press your temple against the tuff, you don't hear people. You hear the groan of tectonic plates. You hear the slow, agonizing movement of the Anatolian crust. This level was the early warning system of the world. A place where a man could feel an earthquake before it ever reached the surface. In this final void, time does not exist. There are no shadows that move with the sun. No change in temperature to mark the seasons. It is a constant, frozen 55 degrees Fahrenheit. Whether it is a blizzard on the plains above or a scorching desert wind, here, nothing changes. This stasis is what allowed the city to survive. It was a fortress of unchanging reality. A place where history could be paused and held in a cold, stone grip until it was safe to resume. Notice the small, circular pits in the corners of this room. They are not wells. They are not storage bins. They are stillness traps. The residents would fill them with water and watch the surface. If a ripple appeared, it meant someone, or something, was moving in the tunnels above. It was a liquid radar. A way to see through the darkness using nothing but the physics of vibration. Every drop of water was a sentinel. The psychology of being at the very bottom is a psychology of finality. If the enemy breached the rolling doors, if the ventilation was choked, if the wells were poisoned, this was the last stand. There are no secret exits here. No hidden paths back to the light. To be in the 18th level is to be at the end of the line. It is a place of absolute commitment. If we fall here, they must have thought, we fall into the heart of the goddess herself. There is a strange, terrifying peace in that kind of certainty. Run your hand over the unfinished floor. You can feel the grit of the volcanic ash. This dust is the last thing the carvers touched before they abandoned their tools. Why did they stop? Did the threat above vanish? Or did the mountain finally say, no more? The stone here is impregnated with the minerals of the deep. In some places, it glitters with a dark, metallic sheen. Pyrite, iron, traces of ancient volcanic fire. It is a reminder that this city was built inside a tomb of old flames. We are walking through the ashes of a volcano that died millions of years before the first human ever held a chisel. The city of Derinkuyu is just a brief moment in the life of this stone. A temporary inhabitant of a permanent abyss. Think of the lamps. To maintain a flame at this depth required constant effort. The oil had to be carried down 18 flights of stairs. The wicks had to be trimmed with precision. A single lamp in this room would look like a star in a black universe. Small, fragile, and desperately lonely. And yet, as long as that flame burned, the city was alive. The light didn't just show them the walls, it showed them their own existence. We are standing in the center of the lowest room. The air is perfectly still. The darkness is pressing against your eyes. Even the modern equipment we bring here feels like an insult to the ancient silence. This level doesn't want to be known. It doesn't want to be filmed. It belongs to the deep. It belongs to the people who were brave enough to descend into the void to keep their children safe. Let us leave the light off for a moment. Complete blackness. In this blackness, you realize that the people of Derinkuyu were not hiding from the world. They were creating a new one. A world built on trust, on silence, and on the incredible strength of the human will to endure. They took a mountain and made it breathe. They took the dark and made it a home. The journey ends here. Not because we have seen everything, but because there is nowhere else to go. Below us is only the solid, uncarved bone of the earth. Above us are 18 levels of human struggle, human faith, and human genius. As we prepare to begin the long climb back to the surface, back to the noise and the light, the 18th level stays behind. It remains in its cold, eternal vigil. A silent witness to what we are capable of when we have nowhere else to run. The mountain is quiet. The void is full. And the stone, as always, remembers. We are finally ascending. But as we leave the cold, we find ourselves looking into a different kind of darkness. Not the darkness of the stone, but the darkness of our own reflection. The modern mirror. In the world above, we speak of progress as if it were a straight line leading toward the sun. We surround ourselves with glass towers, digital clouds, and the blinding speed of instantaneous light. We believe we have outgrown the cave. We believe we have conquered the silence. But as we walk through these ancient corridors, we must ask the question that the mountain has been whispering for centuries. Are we truly any different from the 20,000? Think of the digital labyrinths we build for ourselves today. We no longer carve volcanic ash, but we carve our lives into the endless canyons of the internet. We spend our hours in the flickering glow of screens, much like the people of Derinkuyu spent theirs in the glow of oil lamps. We seek refuge in our private tunnels of data, hiding from the noise, the chaos, and the storms of a world that feels increasingly out of control. The psychology of the earth has not disappeared, it has only changed its medium. Look at the walls of this final passage. They are a bridge between two worlds. The people of Derinkuyu lived in a state of constant, collective meditation. They had to. Their survival depended on their ability to be still, to be quiet, to be patient. Our modern world is an experiment in the opposite. We are a civilization of the scream. We are a people of the constant, restless movement. And yet, when we come here, to this silent mirror, we feel a strange, haunting pull. A longing for the depth. A longing for the stillness that we have lost in the frantic brilliance of the surface. What does it mean to be hidden? In the Bronze Age, to be hidden was to stay alive. In the modern age, to be hidden is a luxury. We are the most visible generation in human history. Our locations are tracked, our thoughts are recorded, our faces are mapped. We are living in a panopticon of our own making. Derinkuyu stands as a silent critique of our exposure. It reminds us that there is power in being unseen. There is a sacredness in the dark that the modern world has forgotten. As we move closer to the exit, the air begins to change. It carries the scent of something forgotten. The scent of the open sky. But the mirror tells us that we are carrying the mountain back with us. Every person we pass on the street is a walking Derinkuyu. They have their own secret levels. Their own hidden chapels where they pray for things the world doesn't understand. Their own rolling stone doors that they shut when the pain becomes too much. We are all architects of our own internal sanctuaries. The tragedy is not that they lived underground. The tragedy is that we often live in the dark even when the sun is shining directly upon us. Look at the light coming from the shaft above. It is a thin, silver needle piercing the gloom. For the people of Derinkuyu, that light was a promise. For us, it is often a distraction. We have so much light that we no longer see the stars. We have so much noise that we no longer hear the heartbeat of the earth. The modern mirror asks us to look at our hands. They are clean, free of the dust of the tuff. But are they stronger? Are they more resilient than the hands that carved 18 levels of hope out of a volcano? There is a lesson in the architecture of subtraction. Our world is built on addition. More things. More speed. More connections. Derinkuyu was built on the wisdom of less. Less space. Less light. Less noise. And in that less, they found more. They found a community so tight that 20,000 people could breathe as one. They found a faith so deep that it didn't need a cathedral to reach God. They found a humanity that was refined by the pressure of the mountain. We are standing at the threshold now. The point where the stone ends and the air begins. Pause here, and let the weight of the journey settle into your bones. The modern mirror is not here to make us feel superior to the past. It is here to remind us that we are part of the same story. We are all just travelers in the dark, looking for a way to keep the lamp lit. Whether we are running from a Hittite army or a modern anxiety, the solution remains the same. We must build. We must trust. We must endure. As you step out into the blinding light of Cappadocia, your eyes will sting. The world will feel too large, too loud, too bright. You will want to turn back, to return to the cold, predictable safety of the shadows. But you cannot stay in the earth forever. The mountain has taught us what it needed to teach. It has shown us the depths of our own potential. Now, it is time to take that depth to the surface. The journey is over. The tunnels are empty. The stone wheels are still. But the mirror remains. It is in your eyes now. It is in the way you look at the sky. It is in the way you value the silence. The sun is waiting. The wind is calling. And the mountain, it is finally at peace. The air is changing. We have spent hours in the womb of the mountain. We are standing at the final threshold. But before we step back into the world of noise, we must confront the finality of this silence. This is the end of the labyrinth. The final whisper. Do not be in a hurry to leave. The surface world is a world of distractions. It is a world of mirrors and shadows that move too fast to be understood. But here, at the mouth of the deep, time is still frozen. Every breath you take here is heavy with the weight of 3,000 years of human endurance. The final whisper is not a sound you hear with your ears. It is a vibration you feel in your marrow. It is the earth's way of saying, I have held you. Now, go and see if you have learned how to hold yourself. Think of the physical sensation of leaving this place. Your skin, which has grown accustomed to the constant, unyielding 55 degrees, will soon be touched by the chaotic warmth of the sun. Your eyes, which have learned to find detail in the absolute black, will be blinded by the brilliance of the sky. This transition is a rebirth. The people of Derinkuyu didn't just walk out of a cave, they were born back into a world that had forgotten them. They carried the cool, dark wisdom of the stone in their lungs as they climbed these final stairs. Look at the walls around you one last time. These are the same walls that witnessed the birth of empires and the fall of kings. They have seen the torches of the Hittites, the prayers of the Christians, and the curiosity of the modern traveler. They do not judge. They only endure. The final whisper tells us that our lives are brief, but our impact is deep. We are like the chisel marks on these walls. Individually, we are just small scratches in the tuff. But together, we have carved a city that even time cannot destroy. Pause here. Let the silence wash over you like cold water. In our modern existence, we are terrified of being still. We fill every gap with noise, every shadow with a screen. We have forgotten that the most important conversations happen in the dark. The final whisper is a reminder of the power of the internal world. The people of Derinkuyu had no internet, no global maps, no satellites. But they had each other. And they had the silence. In that silence, they found a strength that we, with all our technology, often struggle to find. What happens to a soul that has lived in the 18th level? It becomes solid. It becomes patient. It learns that the storms on the surface are temporary, but the peace of the deep is permanent. As you climb, you are not just moving upward, you are bringing that solidity with you. You are the container for the mountain's secret. The final whisper asks you, will you stay quiet when the world screams? Will you stay grounded when the world shakes? Imagine the last person to leave this city, centuries ago. They would have stood exactly where we are standing. They would have looked back into the dark, perhaps with a sense of sadness. The tunnels were their home. The darkness was their protector. They were leaving behind the only world they knew for a surface that was beautiful but dangerous. As they stepped out, they didn't leave the mountain. They became the mountain. They carried its resilience in their hearts. We are doing the same today. Every hour we have spent in this digital journey, every level we have descended, has been a preparation for this moment. The final whisper is a bridge. It connects the ancient carver to the modern viewer. It reminds us that we are part of the same human story. A story of seeking safety, of building community, and of refusing to let the light go out. The stairs are narrowing now. The light from above is no longer silver, it is becoming golden. The scent of dry grass, of wild thyme, of the Anatolian dust is reaching us. It is the scent of the world of the sun. But before the sun claims us, stay in the shadow for one more minute. Derinkuyu is not a place you visit. It is a place you inhabit. It stays with you. It becomes part of your mental architecture. When your life becomes a labyrinth, when you feel the weight of the world pressing down on you, remember level 18. Remember that there is always a way to breathe. There is always a way to carve a room for your soul. The final whisper is the ultimate truth of the earth. You are not alone in the dark. 20,000 people proved that. 3,000 years of history proved that. And your presence here, at the end of this journey, proves that. The mountain is closing its eyes. The silence is returning to the deep. But you are walking out. As we return to the light, let this final reflection be the compass for your own life. We often think that to be buried is to be finished. But Derinkuyu teaches us that to be buried is often to be preserved. In the darkest moments of your life, When you feel the weight of the mountain pressing upon your chest, remember that you are not being crushed, you are being refined. The depth of your struggle is the only true measure of your strength. Do not fear the shadows, for it is only in the deep that we learn how to keep our own light burning. The journey is complete, but the mountain will always be listening. Go now, into the light, and keep your lamp burning.